I wanted to use today to talk about what happens when you book a behaviour consultation. So we've gone through the how do you actually book and then what happens next. So once you've filled in all the forms and the paperwork, what happens next is we book a suitable time and then we decide where the consultation is going to take place. Largely, these take place at your home. One of the reasons for that is because it's much less stressful for you and it's much less stressful for your dog. But it's also very often where the behaviour is occurring. But if you have a reactive dog, we don't want to put him in a situation where we can't control what's going to happen in terms of other dogs. So it's quite nice to do the first session with him relaxed and comfortable at home. Once I arrive, we'll sit down and we'll go through the details on your form, and then we will also then start to look at a case history. So I need to know as much as I can about what happened with your dog, what happens when the behaviour occurs, what your history with the dog is it a rescue? Have you had it from a puppy? If it was a puppy, sometimes things like how big the litter was has a bearing on things, and it's really useful to know certain details. So the more information that you can give me, even if to you it appears irrelevant, you'll be very surprised how much relevance there actually is. Once we've gone through a case history, we'll look at a little bit about what your goals and what you want to have happen with your dog and where you want to be. And we also do a little bit of managing expectations, because there's no doubt that people often want a quick fix. But very often this is not either good for your dog or, depending on what's going on, not necessarily going to happen as quickly as you think. Very often I say to people, if it's taken 6 months to get here, it's going to take at least 6 months to get away from that. That's not to say that you need to see me for the whole of that 6 months. You might want to see me a few times at the beginning and then spaced out a little bit during. Or it might be that you can manage to do a lot of the behaviour modification programme on your own with a little bit of telephone support or messenger support. It's useful for you just to have a concept of it isn't going to be fast. Expect it not to be fast, and if things happen quickly, that's all to the better, I think. So then, once we've gone through the case history and we've talked a little bit about what your expectations are for how things could be better or could be improved, we'll then start looking at some foundation exercises. Now, what you need to understand is that you cannot go out with your dog and work on the behaviour in situ, and that almost doesn't matter what the behaviour is that we're working on. With everything with dogs, we need to do some training without distraction, and then we need to build up the distraction. And there is no way, especially with a reactive dog, that you can go out and get into his head while he's reacting. We need to start dialing that down, get into his head, help him to understand that we're there to support him before he starts reacting. Once we get to that stage, we can then build up and do things with much more bigger and bigger distractions. So our plan with your dog is to work on some easy foundations, some grassroots stuff, things to get him to focus on you, things to get him to switch off. And a lot of what I end up working on is things like self-control, because this is one of the things that with a lot of behaviour problems, this is what's missing with your dog. And you'll often hear people call it all sorts of names, but basically it's self-control, because some of these behaviours you can't control him. He has to learn to control himself, and that's not as complicated as it may seem. What I aim to do is I aim to give you an understanding of why your dog is behaving like he's behaving and help you get that understanding so that if something else occurs, you've got a few more tools in your toolkit to help you help him. Because I'm not always going to be there. Now, lots of people book several sessions, and that's really useful because then we can build up gradually to going out and doing other things, going out in situ, having me on your shoulder saying, do that, do this, do that. That would work. This is why he's doing this at the moment. But basically, the first visit is a little bit about me getting to know you. It's about me starting to build some foundations with you. And really, it's about you starting to understand why the problem is occurring. For more simple problems, one visit is enough. But that is really between you, your dog, and me, and you might find that you do want to book some more to have a little bit more guidance and a bit more support. Following the visit, I send you a report and some handouts and some exercises to do, and you have me available on the telephone. You also have me available via Messenger. You can send me videos. What's really useful, often before the consultation and then after the first consultation, is to send me videos showing me what's happening now, how things have changed. And one of the things that you need to understand, and I find people find this very, very difficult, is that often people will say to me, well, last week you told me to do this. But training is an iterative process. So what happened last week moves the dog on to another phase of the training. And what we then need to do is then we add more to it. So we go, okay, so now you understand this. Now can we push you a little bit further? And once we get to that of pushing him a little bit further, then we can push again. But it's about understanding that process and knowing where we're heading towards. So we have a goal in mind, which with a reactive dog may only be that he can walk out calmly. Some dogs don't want a million best friends. They just want to be able to be calm around other dogs. And if that's all you can get from them, then that's all you can get from them. And some dogs are introverts. They don't want a million dog friends. So I think managing expectations, as I come back round to that, is a really useful thing. Anyway, that's what happens. If you've got any further questions, by all means put them in the chat box below and I will answer them for you, or feel free to PM me and ask me a little bit about your dog. Thank you.